Thank you very much for this invitation to join this workshop and sharing the ideas on this fascinating international project that you have lined up. Um, it, I'm not, conventionally don't speak at fora on education, but the questions were so fascinating. I have a few things to say, acutely conscious that we have very little time. So let me just very quickly put them like in bullet points almost. Number one, I was thinking I am coming to this discussion as a teacher and as a researcher. So let me bring what I know, what I understand to this forum. If we look at the foundational idea of the modern university from the Humboldtian idea that we have begun with, it's about developing good citizens for modern nation states. And the idea was to bring the arts and the sciences together, etc., and to create some kind of universal understanding of what it is to be well educated, to understand things that society needs, and so on. In that sense, it seems to be a very good foundational idea. But one of the things that has come out of it, and of course, if we had time, we would discuss this, is that there is a separation between the head and the hand. And so much of modern education has privileged education of intellectual variety, and education of anything to do with the hands is a binary created between the vocational and the intellectual. This is the first point, and it will link back to what I have to say later. I want to develop this further as of now. The second point that I want to bring up in connection with this is that um, social science education, which is what I have been involved with 30 plus years or more in at Delhi University, um, one of the focus has been about problem solving. Sorry, has not been about problem solving. It has been about focusing on problematizing. Now that is a sort of a Freudian slip in that sense that we have created a binary between problematizing and problem solving such that we feel that we present issues in the classroom, we bring arguments of all kinds, we bring critiques, and sometimes also discuss alternatives, but they are in certain kinds of conceptual parameters and believe that that is the contribution that we can make. But we know, all of us, and I can see many amongst the participants, many are teachers, we are in the classrooms a lot. And when we encounter our students, many of our students want to know, okay, so we've understood this. Now, what do we do? Is there something we can do? And we tell them, either you can do more problematizing as social science students, and I'm deliberately caricaturing a little bit our position in the universities, because I think that we privilege this problematizing position in a way that's detrimental to the possibilities that education can offer to the young people who come to us. And I think that one of us, we really need to understand that it has a potential beyond what we have actually worked with so far. And the clue to this came to me very early on. I was privileged to be taught by someone who was politically extremely active on the ground. While he was a very good teacher at our department as well, he taught us many different courses. He taught us that to link academia with the ground, to look for research questions by keeping your ear to the ground, by listening to activists, by engaging with them, is a very important means by which we learn how better to actually orient our understanding and to look for issues in the future. And I think that this, and on the basis of this understanding, we convened under his guidance for many, many years something we call the grassroots politics colloquium. People would every year we would choose a theme, a development, a theme within the broader issues of development. So we chose either water, or we chose forests, or we chose tribal lives, or we chose agriculture or medicine, and invited activists from all over the country to speak on the issues that we had identified at, that we felt were very important issues on the ground. And the norm was that for 2 days, the academics would listen quietly and they would learn from what the activists had to say. And of course, they were allowed to engage. The point was to engage, to question, to listen, but to create discussion. And I think that taught me something very, very fundamental, that what questions in politics I'm asking in the classroom, what questions of politics I'm asking as a researcher, are questions that are organically linked to what is happening on the ground. And I know that what I'm saying is in response to something that is already happening, or we can see that can come, or something that needs to be thought about, etc. So there is an active engagement with what is happening on the ground. And of course, in the last 20, 30 years, a lot of development activism that has happened, a lot of anthropology that has been written around developing issues is based on this. And so it's a very welcome development. It's a very welcome kind of input, which would go into something like this when we're talking about transforming education systems for sustainable development. But from here, I would like to speak then about the kind of research agenda I chose for myself. And now, when I work with that agenda with my students, how I find the possibility of the higher education space actually linking very systematically with what is going on the ground, while being true to our role of problematizing, of conceptualizing, of theorizing, uh, and analyzing. uh, it is also possible for us to actually fairly directly connect with what is going on the ground. I work on politics of knowledge, and for me, that came from trying to understand the knowledge basis for the development paradigm. And of course, we we began with a critique of the development paradigm. So naturally, it meant that we had to also begin with a critique of the knowledge base that provided the analytical frame of the development paradigm. And so the whole critique of science technology studies, of the dominant, the hegemonic presence of science, and from there, what it did to what the development paradigm did to the already existing knowledges on the ground. Professor Tickley used the term indigenous knowledges and so on, local knowledges. And I think that, there's been so much scholarship on that. What I find working with politics of knowledge, with the politics of knowledge framework that I have tried to develop with my work, is that we see how knowledge is constituted on the ground on the basis of many different perspectives. What is available with people on the ground, what they are actually continuing to use, combined with how actually state policy looks at these knowledges, often marginalizes them, tries to impose other kinds of knowledges, the kind of contestations it develops on the ground and how people respond to them. The kind of issues when the products of already existing knowledges, traditional knowledges, are brought to the main market, to the big market. How do they work? Do they find their way at all? If you are to respect a knowledge, if you are to sustain a knowledge, then it has to find a place in the contemporary political economy. How do you do that? How does it actually play itself out? These are fascinating questions, very important questions, which actually then enable us to understand the mechanism by which traditional knowledges actually come into modern political economic systems, modern policy systems, and how is it that civil society organizations, or indeed any kind of small collective action by people on the ground, how they actually grapple with these contestations, and how is it that they make knowledge systems survive, or sometimes they're unsuccessful with that. I think that when a higher education space like the one that I'm in, the Department of Political Science, in our research questions, we look at the politics of knowledge in terms of specific knowledges that are on the ground. And I'm pleased to share that my students are now taking up all kinds of issues on the ground, from someone who's working on technologies that make gur in eastern UP, to sericulture in Jammu, to fisheries in Bihar, all kinds of questions where these contestations are being understood. And each one of those students comes back every single time from the field, troubled and saying, but there are lots of things that can be done. I can see, I can problematize as well as I can solve some of these problems. What do you think I should be doing? And I'm happy to say that these are important questions that all of us feel are equally important questions for all of us to participate in. And I think that if higher education systems are to engage with the issues of SDGs and how they work on the ground, this is my humble little contribution in terms of what how it can play out. And we've just begun to do this work now 4 5 years ago. I think that there's possibly an opportunity to actually see how it works, to join your deliberations. We can share our work with you and to see how it works out. And I would say that my frame of the politics of knowledge in development, as I like to put it, would potentially be a means by which these questions can be explored. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I hope I've been able to contribute something to your discussion.